most of what you worry about never actually happens. Your brain invents these problems for a reason, and once you see it, the worry loosens its grip. Think back to last week. Most of the disasters you rehearsed in your head never showed up. The awkward conversation went fine. The email you dreaded got a normal reply. The worst-case scenario stayed exactly where it was born, inside your own head. And yet, this morning, your brain is already busy building the next one. That's not a personal flaw. That's a feature of the machine you live inside. Your brain is not built to make you happy. It's built to keep you alive. And a brain built for survival treats an imagined problem almost the same way it treats a real one. Today we're going to look at exactly why that happens, what's really running the show, and how to gently step out of the loop. The organ inside your skull evolved in a world where a rustle in the grass could be a predator. In that world, the ancestors who assumed the worst survived, and the calm optimists often didn't. You inherited the nervous system of the worriers. That's not weakness, that's why you're here. The part of the brain most involved in this is the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure that scans for threat. It doesn't care about accuracy, it cares about speed. Its job is to sound the alarm first and let logic catch up later. False alarms are cheap, missed real threats are fatal. So your brain evolved a bias. Better to invent 10 problems that never happen than to miss the one that could hurt you. That bias worked beautifully in a dangerous physical world. The problem is, your amygdala doesn't know the world has changed. It treats an unread text, an unclear tone, or an unpaid bill with the same urgency as a footstep behind you at night. The threat is now abstract, but the alarm is still ancient. Here's the second piece most people miss. Your brain has a default setting when nothing urgent is happening. A network called the default mode network. It switches on the moment you stop focusing. Standing in line, driving home, lying in bed at 2 a.m. This network pulls you into rehearsal, replaying the past, previewing the future, editing conversations that already happened. That mental drift feels like thinking, but a lot of it is actually threat scanning, dressed up as reflection. Your mind is checking, over and over, for anything unresolved it might need to defend against. And here's the twist that changes everything. Most of the problems you invent aren't predictions, they're preparations. Your brain isn't trying to tell you the future. It's trying to rehearse pain in advance, so the pain will hurt less if it ever arrives. That's why worry feels productive even when it isn't. You're not solving anything. You're patting yourself against an outcome that hasn't happened and probably won't. Notice what this does inside the body. The moment you imagine the worst, your brain releases cortisol, the primary stress hormone. Cortisol is useful in short bursts. It sharpens attention and prepares you to act. But when it drips into your system all day because of imagined threats, it starts wearing you down. Worse sleep, tighter chest, foggier thinking. Your body is paying a real, physical bill for problems that were never real to begin with. And here's what most people don't realize about that bill. The brain can't easily tell the difference between something you're vividly imagining and something you're actually experiencing. Brain scans consistently show that mentally rehearsing a stressful scenario activates many of the same regions as living through it. That means every time you replay a fight that hasn't happened, you are, in a small but real way, living it. You're not preparing, you're paying twice, once for the real event, if it ever comes, and once for every rehearsal of it in your head. But there's a subtler force at work, too. And this is the one that keeps most people trapped for years without noticing. Uncertainty. Your brain treats uncertainty as a threat in itself. An unresolved situation is like an open browser tab in the mind. It keeps quietly running in the background, draining energy. So your brain tries to close the tab by inventing an answer, any answer, even a painful one. A definite bad outcome feels safer than an unknown one. That's why you'll sometimes catch yourself almost hoping for the worst, not because you want it, but because your nervous system wants the waiting to end. Certainty, even negative certainty, feels like relief. This is why what-if spirals rarely stop on their own. Each answered what-if opens two more. The next habit of the brain is what we might call the negativity magnet. Your prefrontal cortex, the thoughtful, planning part behind your forehead, is powerful but slower than the amygdala. By the time logic arrives, the fear has already framed the scene. The prefrontal cortex often ends up rationalizing the worry instead of questioning it. That's why smart people are not immune to invented problems. In fact, a sharper mind often builds more convincing worst-case scenarios, not fewer. Intelligence without awareness just gives you better special effects for the same old horror movie. Now here's where it starts to loosen. When you notice a worry, ask a simple question. Is this a problem or a prediction? A problem is something happening right now that you can act on. A prediction is a story your brain is telling about a future that hasn't arrived. Problems get solved. predictions get watched. Just labeling the thought, "This is a prediction, not a problem," engages the prefrontal cortex and quiets the amygdala. Neuroscientists sometimes call this "name it to tame it." The act of naming a feeling literally reduces its intensity in the brain. You don't have to fight the worry, you just have to notice what it actually is. The next practical shift is even smaller, and somehow it works even better. When your brain hands you a worst-case scenario, gently ask it for the most likely case. Not the best case, the honest, boring, most likely case. Your brain resists this at first because most likely doesn't feel protective. But most likely thinking is what actually matches reality. Worst-case thinking is fiction with a survival bias. Over time, this rewires the pattern. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself based on repeated use, means every time you interrupt the spiral and choose the honest estimate, the spiral gets a little weaker. You're not suppressing the worry. You're teaching the network a new default. Another practice is what I'd call the 90% rule. When you catch yourself in a loop, ask, has this exact worry ever actually happened in the form I imagined? For most people, honestly, the answer is almost never. The specific disaster your brain rehearsed rarely arrives in that specific shape. Life brings real challenges, yes, but they almost always look different from the ones your mind pre-produced. That gap is your evidence. Collect it. You can even keep a small note on your phone, a running list of worries that never came true. Over a few weeks, that list becomes the most honest argument against your own brain. You start to trust yourself more, not because life gets easier, but because you finally see how much of your suffering was invented in advance. Here's another quiet shift that changes a lot. Your brain invents fewer problems when the body is calm, because a settled body sends fewer alarm signals up to the mind. Slow breathing, especially longer exhales than inhales, activates the vagus nerve, which is the main brake on the stress response. 2 or 3 minutes of that is often enough to drop cortisol enough that the default mode network stops manufacturing threats. You don't always need to argue with your thoughts. Sometimes you just need to lower the volume of the body underneath them. And there's one more layer worth naming, because most people never see it. A lot of invented problems are actually old ones in disguise. Your brain uses today's uncertainty as a stage to replay a fear it learned a long time ago. The email you're afraid to send, the conversation you're rehearsing, the rejection you're bracing for. If you look closely, they often rhyme with something older, a moment when you actually did get hurt, dismissed, or left in the dark. Your brain isn't broken, it's protecting a younger version of you that once needed protecting. When you see that, the worry stops feeling like an enemy. It starts feeling like a nervous friend who never got the memo that you're safe now. You don't have to argue with that friend. You just have to reassure them. So, let's tie this together into one useful idea you can walk away with. Your brain invents problems because it was built to. It's not a malfunction, it's a survival instinct wearing modern clothes. The amygdala fires early. The default mode network fills the silence. Cortisol makes it feel urgent. Uncertainty makes it feel unbearable. And imagination makes it all feel real. But the moment you notice the machinery, you're no longer inside it. Awareness is the switch. You don't have to stop worrying. You just have to stop worrying. You just have to stop believing every worry your brain hands you. Ask, is this a problem or a prediction? Ask, what's the most likely case, honestly? Notice the body, breathe longer out than in. And keep a quiet list of the disasters that never arrived. Do that gently, for a few weeks, and something changes. The volume drops, the loops shorten, the mind gets a little more spacious. You start to realize the future is almost always kinder than the version your brain rehearses. And here's the reflection to sit with. How much of your life have you already lived through in your head before it ever happened? If one line here landed, tell me in the comments which worry your brain invents most often. Sometimes just naming it out loud takes half its power away. If this resonated, you'll want the video I made on the quiet habits that calm an overactive mind. It pairs with this one almost perfectly. And if you're new here, this channel goes deep into practical brain habits every week. Calm, clear, no hype. Subscribe and turn the notification bell on so the next one finds you. Your brain will always try to protect you from a future that isn't here yet. Your job is to stay awake to the life that already is.